I want to go over again President Trump's world view. It has changed in his second administration from his first. It's important for everybody to know how the president is processing the amazing amount of information that he gets every day. First of all, Mr. Trump believes the executive branch now has to be the most powerful and the most impactful part of the United States government. And that is because Congress is so partisan, so divided, it acts so slowly that literally nothing would get done if the president didn't sign executive orders and take the lead into trying to do what he wants to do. So just deferring to Congress, nothing's going to happen. They can't even pass a spending bill. So that Mr. Trump has kind of diminished Congress. And I think he's pretty much correct there. You're going to throw it into Congress, you're not going to get anything. It's going to take forever. Secondly, the world in Mr. Trump's eyes is divided very simply. You're either pro-America or you're anti-America. If you're pro-America, we'll try to help you. If you're anti-America, we're going to hurt you. That's what it is. Now, there are some places that he doesn't care about. All right, it's just a minor thing and doesn't pay attention to. But it's a very simplistic view of the world. Now, he's also a man who tries to convince, and he will make deals with people that he doesn't particularly like. And he does that in his mind to improve America, America first. That's what that's all about. And third, President Trump firmly believes that he knows best. What are you going to do? I mean, the man's brilliant. You have to admit it. Nobody else has come close to him as far as elevating from a business portfolio into the most powerful man in the world, two-term president. Come on. You got to give him the credit for accomplishment. So he thinks he knows best. Even when I speak with him, I don't try to outdo him or top him. I do try to convince him by giving him, a perspective that is easily understood. I don't weigh him down with a million details. But I know, and everybody else knows, that if Donald Trump decides something, very hard to persuade him otherwise. So I'm happy to give you his worldview. If you have any questions about it, bill@BillO'Reilly.com. Here's a talking points memo, a new approach to control illegal immigration. So yesterday I just scorched 10 states who are in rebellion against the federal government. So if you are a premium or concierge member on BillO'Reilly.com, you can watch our show and get a transcript anytime you want. All right? And that is a very big convenience if you are a seeker of knowledge. So we went over that this is a rebellion, and my column is up on BillO'Reilly.com that tells you which the states they are and what they're doing. And it's ironic because it happened 157 years ago, I believe it was. Andrew Jackson, same thing with South Carolina, and Jackson took care of South Carolina. You can't be in rebellion against the federal government. Well, anyway, I am now going to put forth to you I think a pretty good solution, not a 100% solution, but something that would work. So we have a 1952 immigration law. 1952 has not been upgraded because both parties don't want to upgrade it. They both use it for political advantage. So there's no drive to have a new immigration bill or laws, set of new laws, none. So 1952, and President Truman vetoed that bill, but his veto was overridden by Congress. The reason that Truman vetoed it was he didn't believe the bill had enough non-white opportunities for people to come to the United States. It was almost all white people that were allowed in here. That's why Truman vetoed it. Anyway, As everybody knows, Joe Biden let everybody in, no restraints. And according to the Migration Policy Institute, pretty good. They're pretty good. 14 million foreign nationals crashed in here under Biden. 14 million. Now, there's a lower number put forth by Pew Research, 11 million. But it's still a colossal amount of people. Out of those 14, 11, whatever number you want to take, 10 to 15% are criminals, people who will hurt you. And that is a colossal number, too, that you add the foreign criminals to the domestic criminals, and you have a wave, and we've seen it. All right. Now, Biden didn't care. The Democratic Party doesn't care. In fact, the radical end of the Democratic Party continues to want an open border. That's what you're seeing in Minnesota. These people screaming about ICE and impeding ICE, they don't want any restrictions. And they don't want to hunt down the criminals. That's who they are. It's hard to believe, but that's who they are. And you got to accept it. Okay? So you can't surrender to it. And if I was on a Hannity radio program today, you might want to listen to that. I said, if I were the president, I'd have the FBI interviewing mayors and governors who will not enforce immigration law. By interviewing, I mean, you go in, the feds go in, you sit them down and you say, why are you not doing X? Why are you not doing Y? When you know that federal law trumps your state law. The federal law, you know that in the Constitution. That's what I've been doing now. Because if you're going to rebel against the United States and you're leading the rebellion, you're in trouble. So that has to be built. But that's not the solution. Here's the solution. So by executive order, again, Congress would never vote. You never get it into the Senate. Okay? By executive order, President Trump signs a proclamation that says if you are in this country without proper documentation, you need to go to your post office where there will be a Homeland Security form that you have to fill out. And the form will be your name, where you live, are you employed, how many children do you have, where did you come from, on and on and on. You fill it out. You put it back into the prepaid envelope, and you send it to Washington, to Homeland Security, which then enters your questionnaire into a database. Now, you have 90 days to do it. That's fair, 3 months to do it. If you don't do it, then you are subject to immediate detention and deportation. That's it. You're going. And I don't think there's a court in law that would block that, because that's national security. So then you separate the people, and the thugs, the criminals, are never going to answer the questionnaire, ever. So you put them in a category, and then you have the so-called law-abiding migrants in another category, and then you adjudicate them. So it goes into immigration courts, where you'd have to hire a lot more judges to do it, but they look at it and they say, there are some people who've claimed asylum. There are some people that are married to American citizens. On and on, what's your story? And then the federal government sends you a conclusion. You have to appear at this point, or you're okay for a year, whatever it may be. Okay? And you have to carry that card wherever you go. So if ICE stops you, you produce the card, I'm cooperating, then ICE lets you go. Unless you commit a crime, unless they're hunting you for a crime, of course. So that way you get an orderly basis of deportation. You get to know who's here. And again, the bad guys aren't going to cooperate, make it a lot easier to get them out. You don't have that card, you can't produce it. Okay, it's like a license. Where's your ID? You gotta produce it. It's part of your ID. So what's the downside to that? The liberals will say privacy. Privacy? What are you talking about? You're not supposed to be here. It's a privilege to be here. You have to go through a process to be here. Privacy? I don't believe the courts, the state courts in the rebellion places, of course, but federal courts are going to go, this makes sense. And this allows the federal government to step away and use a less heavy hand, which is good for the nation. All right, I can't do better than that. And I've been thinking about this for a long time. And again, bill@BillO'Reilly.com, bill@BillO'Reilly.com. I'd like to know whether you support or oppose that. And that's a memo. All right, so Minnesota is now suing the Trump administration, trying to block ICE from enforcing federal law. It's nonsensical, ridiculous. They'll lose the lawsuit. Even the guy on CNN, Ellie Hunting, I believe his name, the legal analyst, says case has no merit. Roll it.
I've read both the Minnesota and Illinois lawsuits. They're really political diatribes masquerading as lawsuits. If you look at what both states are asking the courts to do, it's to kick ICE out of those states and cities and to bar ICE from carrying on federal law enforcement in Illinois and Minnesota. That's the top thing both states asked to do, and they cite zero precedent for that.
Because there is no precedent for it. And I give him credit for doing that. All right, because that's an honest assessment. He's correct. Now, Illinois and ICE is surging in Minnesota. And this is Trump. Trump's not going to surrender to these states. All right, he's just going to jack it up. He's not surrendering. Another politician may, but not him. All right, so ICE is surging in there, and the Department of Homeland Security says it has seized 1,500 migrants in Minnesota, many of them serious criminals. Okay, I don't know. This is what the Department of Homeland Security puts out. I don't know what portion of the 1,500 are criminal, who aren't. They should break it down. But I don't object to this at all. You got to hunt these people, these criminals down. And if you're not a criminal and you're hanging with the criminals, you're going. You're going. All right, in Illinois, another of the rebellious states, I mean, they're suing for unlawful tactics. So they want to knock out roving patrols of ICE. They don't want the feds to be scanning biometric information. It's just nonsensical. But that's Pritzker, all right? Pritzker and Walz. Boy, I'd have FBI on them. I'm more bullish on this than Trump. It's another fail. Joining us now from Washington, D.C. is a former Associated Press correspondent in South America. He's been around a long time. Ken Silverstein. He now is an independent investigative reporter. So am I making any mistakes in my analysis, Mr. Silverstein, first up?
Well, on Venezuela, spot on. And I have reported from Venezuela numerous times since going back to 1990 and Colombia too. I mean, the U.S. government, the CIA, clearly cut a deal, not just with the army, but with Delcy Rodriguez, who is, going out and saying, we'll never stand for this.
Let me interrupt you for a moment. The deal with Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president under Maduro, was made after the snatch, not before.
No way.
No. Trust me on this, Kent. She had no blanking clue, because if she did, she would have blown the whistle. And she did not, because she didn't know. The deal with the army generals who control the country, as you know, they controlled it when you were there, when I was there. Okay, they got the guns. Okay, it was made before the snatch. Go ahead.
I disagree.
Okay,
because
fine.
I mean, there's no question that she doesn't have the authority to, and the deal had to be approved by the head of the army and the head of the Interior Ministry, who controls
Absolutely
the guns,
right.
as you said.
But Dulcie has a cell phone and could have blown the whistle on any raid before it happened, and that's why she did not know. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So anyway, I think there was certainly a deal cut. There's no question about it. I mean,
So why didn't the Associated Press report that?
Well, I guess I hadn't read
You
that
know
article.
it. You know it. I know it. All the veteran reporters in the country had to know it, or you have to resign from your status of a veteran reporter. Why didn't the AP report it?
I absolutely think that mainstream media, with the exception of Fox News and, Newsmax and,
Right, the right-wing people, right.
the right wing, who are favorable to Trump for the most part. There's no question the media has a bias against Trump. The mainstream media, the elite media, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CBS News, AP. I mean, that's obvious. It was obvious. I wrote an article in 2016 before the election, before the presidential election, shortly before the election, which Trump won, which said, I'm my politically, you and I probably disagree on most things. We will agree on some stuff, but I'm on the left. But I worked for the New York Observer, which was owned by Jared Kushner, and I was hired. I was given a column because I was considered to be like an honest lefty, which I think I am, because I will go after if I get a good story, I'll go after whoever it is. And but it was obvious that the media has always treated Trump unfairly, and I have to say, I guess I'm reluctant to say why the AP didn't do anything, because I maybe somebody else wrote an article that talked about a deal.
No, they didn't. We researched it.
Okay, well,
okay, but here's my point. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, because the folks are not in our industry. They don't do what we do. But the Associated Press is really far and away the strongest wire service in the world. It goes out everywhere, okay? And they cannot stop, all right, with their anti-Trump coverage. Now, they do it a number of ways. They don't report stories, as we just demonstrated. If you and I know what happened, and I believe you did too, because I know your background, all right?
It's obvious, yeah.
They obviously knew what happened, but they wouldn't report it. That, to me, is sinful. That's deception. That's hurting the American people. It's hurting the people who rely on the information coming out of the Associated Press.
It's fundamental information that you cannot understand what's happening in Venezuela or what happened with the raid to get Maduro without knowing that. If they didn't agree, if they didn't report that, if they haven't, and I trust you that you searched for it and didn't find it. I haven't, which is why I was reluctant to say too much about this one guy. But, that's a terrible omission. I mean, it's...
Right, and the guy, the White House correspondent, concentrates on chutzpah, putting his own opinion in there.
Yeah.
And again, fine if he's a commentator, but he's a White House correspondent. What the deuce you doing? And so what I want to know from you is, because you work for these people, and it's a whole different outfit now than it was when you were there.
We have
totally different. Do they know how dishonest they are? Do you think?
I don't think they do, and I don't think probably Stengel. You said he knows he's lying. I doubt it, because and this is a question that we will never be able to answer really, unless Stengel sends an email to somebody and says I get paid to lie. Because it's hard to know. But I think the elite media is, again, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the CBS, CNN, they are unbearable because they are so sure they're right. They don't do any reporting. When I was in Venezuela covering an election 20 years ago or 25 years ago, and all of the reporters that came down, all they do is they're not stupid. You're right. They're not stupid. They're the cream of the country. They're Ivy League, and they're, I'm sorry. I don't know if you went to an Ivy League school, but it makes you dumb, because it teaches you that people come out thinking that they really are smarter than everybody else.
No, I know it. There's an arrogance and I did go to Harvard, but I got around that. I took a shot, a vaccination against it. Here's my last question for you. Okay, so if we are in a country that is dependent on a free flow of information, Ken, okay, We are dependent on it. As I said, the regular folks, they don't know Maduro. They don't know what's happening. They don't know why Trump did what he did. They hear and they're reading and they're not getting the story. I think the younger brigade of reporters aren't smart enough. They don't know what happened in Vietnam in 1964. They don't know the CIA was running South Vietnam. They don't know the CIA deposed the people over there. They don't know anything. And yet they're hired by these outfits to do important reporting. But if the American people can't get the information, isn't that going to damage our country severely pretty soon?
I mean, it already has. I think it's, the media is people with journalists. If you I write about the press because I think the press is an important, powerful institution, as powerful as Congress, as powerful as the White House. It plays an incredibly important role in shaping the narrative on every story. And but you can't call reporters. They won't talk to you because they're arrogant, and it's already damaged the country.
Yeah, but I see much worse stuff ahead. You're right. It has damaged the country. And if you compare the Biden coverage with the Trump coverage, I mean, it's just crazy. All right, Ken, thanks very much. We appreciate your voice. Thanks for being a stand-up guy. And final thought of the day. So we do, I don't know, hundreds of concierge requests a week. Concierge membership, BillO'Reilly.com. You get a special email. You got a problem, you want more information, whatever you want, we'll try to make your life better. And a lot of times we need more information from people writing in. So I'm getting hosed by this one and they're doing this to me. And the breakdown is that a lot of people, when we say, okay, we're ready to go, we're ready to help you, send the names and the numbers of the people you've been dealing with who are giving you a hard time. And we'll contact them. About 30% don't. They just don't reply to us. It's so strange. The old adage is the Lord helps those who help themselves. More information you can compile about people doing the wrong thing to you or your family, the easier it is for us to correct that wrong. Thank you for watching and listening to the No Spin News. Here I am after a week of medical challenges, but I'm going out on my shield, so you're not keeping me down until I'm in the grave. And I'm not really that bad, but it's an unpredictable malady. If you read my column, I hope you did yesterday, I explain a little of it. And if you have not, it'll be posted the entire week. I'll get to it at the end of the program. So I'm back, and I had to be on today because we are witnessing one of the most important stories in my entire lifetime of 50 years in journalism, the Minnesota Rebellion. And I hope you will read the column, not only for my situation, but because I'm able to spell out, and you can reread it and file it and keep it. Okay, but I'm going to go over everything tonight, and I'm going to tell you the truth, and I don't care if you don't like the truth or you don't want to hear the truth. You don't want to hear it, blast me off right now, because I'm coming right at you. This is a disgrace, what is happening there in Minnesota. There is no excuse for this, and there are remedies to the situation. And here we go. You got an open rebellion. You got the governor of a state, Walz, just basically saying, we're not only not obeying immigration law, stated law passed by Congress, but we're not going to protect the federal agents assigned to enforce the federal law. So Minnesota state police and local police are not even going to protect you. Has there ever been a more disgraceful governor? Maybe down south, George Wallace. That's Walz. He writes an article in a Wall Street Journal today saying, oh, no, you got it all wrong. You got it all wrong. No. We cooperate with ICE. That is a lie. That governor has ordered his police to stand down and not protect federal agents. If Minnesota authorities stood shoulder to shoulder with federal authorities, no one would be dead. And the legitimate protests, and they are legitimate. You don't like ICE? Okay. But those protesters would be protected. But no, Walz won't do it. Now, I'm not even going to bother with Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis. I'll get to him tomorrow. He's a punk. That's what he is. And I'll prove it to you tomorrow. But I'm not even going to bother with that tonight. But if I'm sitting in Washington, if I'm the president or if I'm the head of the Justice Department, I'm looking at Walz. Why? Listen to this. There is a law against rebellion in the United States. It is 18 U.S.C. Code 2383. It is a federal crime to incite, assist, or engage in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or its laws. Here's the actual wording, quote, whoever incites, sets on foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or laws thereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto, should be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both, and shall be incapable of holding office under the United States. That is the law. So where are you, Kash Patel? Where are you, the FBI chief? Where? What's your plan? Nobody's going to believe ICE investigating ICE or Border Patrol investigating Border Patrol. They won't even believe the FBI. I know that. But this is a law on the books. What are you doing about it? You know what he's doing? He's waiting to be told what to do. That's what Patel's doing. You got to get it in gear, man. This has got to get under control now. Now, today, President Trump and Walz spoke. Excellent. Détente has to be reached. Temperatures down. Violence stopped. But the investigation into what is happening in Minnesota has to be transparent. What Patel should do is get his best investigators into a squad, bring them in, and look and examine the political people in Minnesota and the law enforcement people. Okay? Enough. You can't do the job, Cash, out. Get somebody who can. Okay. This all began because of President Biden. He's the source of the problem. Probably the most corrupt president as far as enforcing federal law in our history. Okay? Biden let everybody in. We're all paying the consequences. Two people with their lives. Starts with Biden. But then the Democratic Party, the entire party, embraced the Biden madness. And that led to Walz and Fry and Minnesota. Big F-you, federal government. Big F-you, President Trump. No. We elected President Trump. He won. He's the president. He's the leader. You hate him? Fine. You don't defy federal law and get people killed. Now, the Democratic Party has got to stop. Okay? You got to stop playing games here. You got to unite with President Trump and the Republican Party and stamp it down. Now. This is a crisis. not only a crisis of violence, but a constitutional crisis. We can't have anarchy and insurrection. Do we all understand that? Okay. Now, at this point, we have to start condemning people for their activities. Not, well, I understand. No. You've got a media that stokes the violence, wants the violence, in my opinion. Roll the tape.
So this cycle of fear and lack of experience leading to this 37-year-old ICU nurse who was clearly trying to help someone else. You can clearly see it in the video, getting, as many would argue, murdered by ICE.
And frankly, I don't know what you're investigating if you're not investigating the straight up murder. The straight up murder. This is the second one.
Well, thanks for due process. Right? Disney, I don't hold her responsible. You know what you got out there. You know what you're putting on the air every day, Disney, Iger, Burbank, California, theme parks. You know what you're doing, and you do it anyway. I don't blame her. That's who she is. Same thing with MS or whatever the hell it is. But the worst is Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. I used to respect Kelly. Listen to this.
Hey everybody, it's Senator Mark Kelly. Hey, I watched that video of Minneapolis today. Probably watched it a dozen times. Pretty obvious that this man was shot dead in the street for no reason. I want to encourage people to believe what they see. Don't let this White House tell you it is something else.
Loathsome. Denial of due process, okay? Just like the other, okay? And this guy knows better. So, I don't know what you do. You people in Arizona, I mean, you're hearing this. Does this do any good at all? No. He's inciting it. Now, the man himself who was killed, a nurse, 37 years old, we traced him, far left guy, doesn't have any history of criminality. Like the woman who was killed, the first one, the man shows up in an area where ICE agents are conducting raids, arrests, okay? He's armed. Got a gun on him. He gets in a physical confrontation with federal agents. He's not some kind of innocent little Bo Peep, this guy. And I hate to say this, he's dead. And he should be mourned. Nobody should be happy about that. And his family should be respected. But this guy brought upon his own demise. That's what he did. Think about it. Step back for a second. You know there's violence. One woman already dead. You show up with a concealed weapon, even if you have a permit to carry, what the deuce difference does that make? You know that you're injecting yourself into a situation that is volatile. Now, the Border Patrol agent who shot him may have made a mistake, may have even committed a crime. That's due process. But the victim walked into his own death. That's the truth. And I hate to say that. You're also hearing about ICE not having the authority to detain migrants. That is a lie. Here is the statute once again. And this comes from an article in the Wall Street Journal. Quote, illegal aliens, however, do not have the same rights as Americans. Under federal immigration law, officers may issue administrative warrant, which means that the probable cause finding is made by an executive branch officer rather than a judicial officer or judge. This is consistent with broad judicial recognition that illegal aliens are not entitled to the same Fourth Amendment protections a U.S. citizen is. It is also consistent with the Supreme Court's admonition that the touchstone of the Fourth Amendment is whether the search or seizure is reasonable, not whether it is supported by a judicial warrant. In Abel versus U.S. 1960, the justices of the Supreme Court recognized that there is overwhelming historical legislative recognition of the propriety of administrative arrests for deportable aliens. All right, that is the law. ICE is not disobeying the law. And how many times have you heard that? That's a 1960 ruling. It has not been updated, not been re-litigated. So now you have elected officials who are saying, oh, what ICE is doing is illegal. That's a lie. Finally, here's the most important part of this story. The anti-American cadres who want to overthrow this government, and they're out there now, are using Minnesota. Okay? This group is led by a man named Neville Roy Singham. He is a communist living in Shanghai, China. It's an organization called Breakthrough News, registered in the USA. Again, the main man's name is Neville Roy Singham. He's behind pushing all of these confrontations. He is using these organizations in the United States to do it. The Party for Socialism and Liberation, Democratic Socialists of America, Freedom Road Socialist Organization, Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee, Black Lives Matter chapters. They are all trying to overthrow the government of the United States. Have you heard that anywhere? Anybody report that to you? Absolute fact. They have millions of dollars. They are pumping all kinds of stuff into Minneapolis to agitate it. This is not organic, these protests. Nobody understands what's really going on. Media will not report it. I will. All right, we got a good guest. I've known him for a long time. His name is Art Del Cueto. Comes to us from Tucson, Arizona this evening. Unbelievable resume. He used to be the former spokesperson for the National Border Patrol Council. He's now the security advisor for the Federation for Immigrant Reform. And as I said, he's in Tucson. All right. Americans don't know the difference between Border Patrol, which shot the man on Saturday, and ICE. What's the difference?
You know, honestly, there's people in the media that don't know the difference. That they continue to put pictures out of Border Patrol when ICE does something, or pictures of ICE when Border Patrol does something. Border Patrol patrols in between the ports of entry. That's what they've done for many, many years. But they also get detailed to other agencies. I myself have been detailed to other agencies all the time when they need assistance, especially within DHS. So you'll have agents that, they'll be detailed out to the OFO, which is the individuals that work at the ports of entry themselves. That's customs and the immigration side. And then you have ICE that deal with the interior. A lot of what they've worked throughout the years is working transport and working in the prisons where these individuals are detained before they're deported. So you're dealing with a bunch of different factors. But because of the mess that the last administration created, you're having to have an all-hands-on-deck approach. And a lot of it is moving Border Patrol agents out there in these areas and these urban areas as well, and the cities as to be able to assist ICE with their operations.
All right, so they're basically, they have the power, as we just said, legally, to execute warrants by their superiors, but they're assisting ICE. So they're working together to find criminal aliens and other people who shouldn't be here. That's what they're doing. Okay. All right, that's very important for understanding. Now, you yourself, Art, because you are on a factory, we go back. You respond to scores of violent conflicts, all right? When a videotape is taken with the woman in a car, now with the man with the cell phone who had a gun inside, all right, his jacket, fully loaded, all right? Now we have, well, let's make the verdict on television.
Right. And that's the problem, Bill. Look, there's been so many people that have talked about these different incidents. I responded to well over 90% of all the use of force incidents in Tucson sector. I've responded to shootings, to, numerous amounts of use of force. I was next to agents numerous times when they would get indicted and they were tried for crimes within the state, even though they were cleared by the federal government. That's very important. They were cleared of any wrongdoing, but the state came after them anyways. And I sat in those courtrooms and listened to all the back and forth from the attorneys. I assisted some of the attorneys that were defending some of the agents. And that's going to be the biggest problem. At this point, where do you find a jury that hasn't heard about these cases?
No, but
and that's
I'm,
just
I'm
one point.
I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is clearly in Minnesota, ICE and the Border Patrol have not de-escalated it.
Absolutely.
And
but it's because they haven't had any assistance, Bill. You have to have assistance from the local authorities.
We know who the bad guys are.
Right.
But when you're on the ground and you have this volatile situation and you draw your weapon, there has got to be some kind of guidance. You just can't be shooting all over the place, Art.
No, and I agree with you. Look, I worked that field many times. I was out in the desert. When I was tracking drug smugglers, my gun was never holstered. My gun was always outside. Now, obviously, you have to have trigger discipline and you keep your fingers off the trigger and everything like that. But there's things that can come out and spook you. Luckily, I wasn't put in that situation where I pulled the trigger. But we need to go through the investigation.
No, absolutely.
Let's wait and see what the investigation draws out.
But there also
and right
needs
now,
to be,
they're not doing that.
But there's a defiance on the part of Homeland Security. No, and they're acting defiant, which is polarizing the whole country. Now, you got to stick up for your guys. You have to, because you're not going to have any guys. But
well,
I'm
retired now. I'm retired now, Bill, so I'm just telling you the way it is.
No, I know. But that's why I'm calling for the FBI to have a special elite unit to go in and look at this. And again, I know Walls and Fry, no matter what the FBI said, not going to believe them.
Well,
but I want it as an American citizen.
Look, on these types of shootings, the people that will take over the investigation is the Office of Inspector General. So the Office of Inspector General are the ones that are going to get involved, and they're the ones that are going to see the shooting itself.
But the actual facts on the ground have to be accumulated before the Inspector General can
And how do you
that.
accumulate those facts when you got rioters that completely disturbed
undercover
the scene?
FBI people? You got to send in elite FBI investigators.
I agree,
to investigate.
But the scene where it occurred has already been damaged because people were all over the place. So that scene was already damaged.
They do the best they can do.
Right. So they should have deployed state and local authorities immediately. Once I saw these individuals that were protesting and they started moving the trash cans and blocking the streets, I knew right away it's lost. So before I went to the Border Patrol, I worked for the state prison for a long time. And when I was in the state prison, they teach you even more tactics on how to be able to handle these types of crowds and this hostility and riot situations. And that's part of the problem. If they would have had more local authorities on scene, they would have been able to avoid some of this. Now, we can Monday morning quarterback it now.
Look,
but
that's the primary
forward.
The primary point I made was Walls, by telling his authorities not to cooperate with ICE, not to protect ICE, not even to protect them. That's almost insurrection. And the FBI should be looking at him.
And you know what, Bill? From talking to agents, you know where else it happened? It happened in Los Angeles when they were out there, and it happened in Chicago when they were out there.
Absolutely.
Just nobody wanted to talk about it.
And it's being fueled by this far left agitators. You imagine a guy in Shanghai, China, orchestrating this whole thing?
And it's going to happen in Arizona next when they start doing any type of tactical enforcement here, because you've heard Senator Kelly already pushing those buttons because they want that to happen.
Yeah, what's up with him? You know him. What's up with this guy?
Last time I talked to him, he refused to shake my hand several years ago. But look, that's part of the problem that we're seeing across the country, is that we have these individuals in leadership positions that are perfectly comfortable doing their press conferences and telling people, do not obey, that we will not comply. I have videos on my social media where I have leadership from Tucson, the city of Tucson, where they've said, we will not obey. We will not comply. Those were their specific
And I want to
words.
give you a plug for that. It's 5 Strands with Art Del Cueto. That's DELCUETO on YouTube. People can see those.
I have it on Instagram. I have it everywhere. They need to see that.
All right. I may have to come out there and get one of your hats. And I appreciate it. I just hope, well,
Bill, let me just add.
Yeah.
Look, I know Kristi Noem personally, and she has done what many others have not done. And we'll hear back and forth on it. And I think we need to start looking into who are these leaks within the agency that have badmouthed her. We need to start looking and seeing, who has been giving her information that perhaps not be correct in order to put her in a spot to look bad. She has accomplished, along with President Trump, to secure the border like nobody else has secured it.
That is absolutely true.
And they all need to get on board with this instead of pointing the finger. But I was an agent for many years, and I can tell you, when egos get in the way, there may be some people still within the agency that instead of agreeing that she's doing a good job, they may be a little upset because they're not the ones that are in that position of leadership, or maybe when they were in those positions, they weren't able to get the job done. Kristi Noem, President Trump, and Tom Homan, and Chief Mike Banks is doing a fantastic job.
All right. Thanks very much. We appreciate it. We'll talk again. All right, here we go. So I had to tell everybody in a short message that I wasn't going to be on the air last week. So I just said I had a medical malady that I'm fighting off. And then it took me by surprise. I was almost speechless about the reaction. 90% of it favorable. And, people concerned. My kids were inundated. Everybody, my friends, it was thousands and thousands everywhere. Now, the haters were out, sure, and I'll take care of them. But overwhelming, I was all around the world. So I'm sitting there, and I had to say it because I don't have a substitute anchor. I'm the product. If I disappear for a week, you got to know why. I wasn't looking for sympathy. All right, I'm going out on my shield. I'll be here as long as I can be here. I'm not whining. This is life. And that's why, if you read the column, I explain the philosophy that I'm bringing. But I got an email from a high school student who I taught 55 years ago. She's obviously not a student any longer. She's a very accomplished doctor in Florida. And this, I'm almost speechless. I'm going to read it to you, okay? Quote, Bill, you have all the good thoughts and prayers from your former students. None of us will ever forget how you cared about us and pushed us to do our best. We are always here for you. And I taught this lady 55 years ago. And so all you teachers out there and doctors and nurses and everybody who cares for other people, and that's what teachers do, law enforcement, they remember. Now, I was only 22 years old when I began teaching high school. And I wanted to use all my skills at that time to help those kids, many of whom needed help. This was a ghetto school, Opelika, Florida. Okay? You don't want to go vacation there. So when I got it, it took me about an hour or two to think about that. Because there are some things in life that come in that you don't expect. I never expected that. And then you got to process it. It's not that I'm some hero or something. I'm not trying to put it up like that. I'm just trying to say that all you do, all the good you do, all the good you do on this earth comes back to you. So we're here, and we're going to carry on as long as we can. And I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'll tell you the truth about it. Right? In fact, I'm going to up it. Okay? And I've had it. And these dishonest press people, these politicians who are hurting you, I'm naming them, I'm calling them out. That's what we're going to do here. So I'm going to get a little rougher. Thank you for watching and listening to the No Spin News all across the world.